Hi, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. My first quilt was an Irish chain quilt, and this was a gift from my grandmother. And so I have to say the Irish chain quilt is what got me interested in quilting. See how to draft your own Irish chain in this week's video tutorial. Okay, I have set up a project called Irish Chain, and I'm going to start by creating the two blocks for my Irish chain quilt. So I will select Design a Block from Scratch. And this one, I'm going to start with a new block, Pieced Easy Draw. And I'm going to start by adjusting the Precision toolbar. And I decided that I would create a 10-inch block. So I'm going to set the width and height to 10. And for the snaps, I'm going to set to 5. And the graph paper cells to 5. I'm going to turn the graph paper cells on, and I'm going to just have snap to grid on. And I'm going to start by taking the grid tool and basically creating a 5 by 5 grid. And I didn't change my columns and rows, so let me undo. Move the columns to 5, rows to 5, and now I can create my 5 by 5 grid. And then I'm going to go to the Color tab, and I'm going to color this, and basically just color every other patch with a dark green. And for the alternate patch, I'll use the light green and the spray can. And once I've done that, I can add that to the project sketchbook. Then for the next one, I'm going to do a new block, Pieced Easy Draw. And I'm going to use the line tool. I can keep all my settings the same, and I'm going to use that first graph paper line and the last graph paper line vertically and horizontally. And this will be for my alternate square. And so now I can go to the Color tab. I'm going to use my dark green with a paintbrush for the 4 corners. And for everything else with the spray can, I'll use the light green. Now, I mentioned that my grandmother used just a plain square and applique on the corners. I'm going to use rotary cutting methods, which will make this a lot easier to do. And now that I'm looking at this, I'm realizing that I don't need these 2 lines, particularly if I'm going to use the same fabric. So I'm going to go back to the Draw tab, use my Pick tool, and I'm going to select those 2 lines. And if I have my Shift key down, I can select them both at once, and I can select Delete. And now I can go to the Color tab, and I can add that to the project sketchbook. Now I'm ready to work on my quilt. So if I go home, I can select Design a Quilt from Scratch. And because I'm going to use alternate blocks, I want an odd number of blocks. But I am going to use the new quilt horizontal. I'm going to go to the layout, and I'm going to change it to a 5 by 5. And I'm going to make my blocks 10 inches, and I don't need any sashing. For my borders, I'm just going to put a binding in place. And so I'm just going to drag this down till it's at basically 3/8 of an inch, 0.375. And because all was turned on, when I moved one of the slider bars, they all moved together. Now I'm going to go to the Design tab, select my block tools. I'm going to scroll to the end, and I'm going to find that first block, and I'm going to use the Alt key on my keyboard, which is going to basically set it in every other square. And I'm going to click on that first square. Then I'm going to scroll to the second to the last with the Alt key again. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now what I'm going to do is go to the Fabric tools, and I'm going to use my eyedropper, find that particular fabric, and with the Control key basically color the border. Now I don't want these dark lines to show, so I'm going to select Hide Show Quilt Patch Lines. And so now I've got a really good view of what my particular Irish chain quilt is going to look like. And I can add it to the sketchbook. Now I decided I would make one more change and actually put some quilting lines in here. So I'm going to go to layer 3, and I have a quilt design that has some shamrocks in it. The particular design actually has an embroidery format, which means I can import that into EQ and use that. So under Embroidery tool, I'm going to select Open Library. And that's going to take me to the embroidery library, but my blocks aren't there. So I'm going to do an import from a .exp file. Now I did bring my exp files into Documents My Key EQ8 Images folder, and it didn't need to be there. I just wanted to be able to quickly find them for this tutorial. And so I will select the shamrock wreath that I designed that's in the .exp, and again any exp file should be able to come in, and I'm going to select Open. Now it doesn't contain thread colors, that's fine, I'm going to add that later. So now I've got the exp file, I'm going to add that to the sketchbook, and I'm going to close. Now I've got it under Set Embroidery, and I can drag this onto the quilt workspace. And I'm going to use the Adjust tool and click on the design, which came in at the 7x7. But I decided that it probably would look nicer at 9x9. So let me go ahead and change the width and tab over and change the height, and now it's 9. And I'm going to make sure I've got Snap Block Position to Grid on, and that way when I move this into place it will snap to the nearest ½ inch, and that's because my grid snap increments is set at 1/2. So once I've got that, I can do a copy. I'm going to do 11 pastes. And once I've got those, I'm going to go ahead and put those in the alternate spaces. And then I'm going to go to the thread tools, and I'm going to pick a green thread, and I am going to do a swap thread and click on the edge of one of the patches. Because I did a swap, it changed all of them. Then as I was looking at this, I thought, what if I had a different color fabric going through the center of the chains? So let me go back to layer 1, go to the fabric tools, and let's find another fabric, maybe this yellow, and I'm going to use the Control key this time with my paintbrush so that it will change out all of these patches as I click on them. So very fast to make that change throughout the quilt, and once I've done, I can add that to my project sketchbook. Thanks so much for watching. For additional EQ tips and to check out my EQ8 classes, please take a look at my website www.onpointquilter.com.